What's good, y'all? You know who it is. It's your boy, Big Tank. Hey, coming at you with a new live stream. Well, got something special for you tonight. Got somebody here who is a wealth of knowledge. He has a smorgasbord of fishy information. Get your palates ready. Get the stomachs ready. He's going to quench your thirst. He's going to fill your stomachs up with fish knowledge. Get your questions ready. We have Bentley Pascoe, Dr. Aquatic is what I like to call it. Feel free to use that. Ask his permission, though, beforehand. Let's bring him up. There we go. What's going on, sir?
Oh man, it's a good Friday. I mean, I'm excited. I'm happy. I apparently have got a new title I didn't know about. I thought the only doctorate I had was in BS, but apparently I got a new one now.
Hey, you know, they tell me to give the flowers to them while they're still here, not when they leave, because they can't smell them. They can't see how pretty they are. None of that, you know. And that's not to take away from anybody else, but you think about it. Whatever hurts on you, there's a doctor for it, right?
That's true. That's
and,
true.
And they all have to share the same realm. And you, sir, to me, are Dr. White.
well, thank you. Just don't ask me how to diagnose your fish diseases, because I'm terrible at
that. Hey, you know. We're not going to do that to you.
Wrong kind of doctor for that one.
Right, we're not going to do that to you. How you doing today, man? Thank you for coming on, giving us a little slice of time.
This is it's so funny because this week, right, I went to Fishtoberfest. I had a talk at my club. I had to edit a bunch of stuff in between all that, and then had this. So it was like I've been warning my lady like a month out. It's like, just a reminder, there's this 1 week period where I basically am not going to exist. I'm going to be at work or doing fish stuff, and then we go back to normal life. And even then, she was just like, "So how much of this week am I actually going to see you?" I was like, "Well, I'll be around for dinner on these days, and that's about it." It's just like, I guess I'll deal with it. She's a sweetheart. She encourages me with a lot of stuff, but it's funny every once in a while when she's like, "This is more than 1 day in a week. Oh, this is gonna be rough."
Hey, it's good that you have a lady that let you negotiate. You know what I'm saying? That's a wonderful thing. That's a wonderful thing.
Well, you know, thankfully she's learned to like. I guess that's not true. She likes fish, but she's learned to really appreciate fish in our relationship.
Gotcha.
And she especially loves Danger Noodle, our dojo loach, which she thinks that is just the most hysterical thing known to man. And there's so many things that she does. Like, she does a bunch of my thumbnails too, because she's super artistic and she's got this like all these cool ideas of how to do stuff. And I'm terrible at all that stuff. You know, that's where like I'm horrible. So being able to get that kind of information from her or that help from her has engaged her further, and it's been really great, because now she's like, I can't wait until we can do XYZ, or I really want to do this, I want to see this. And it's been such a fun thing, because it's like she knows that this is like my nerd hobby, but she's engaged just enough so that she can appreciate why I love it as much as I do. And similarly, I do the same thing for a lot of her hobbies, where it's like, you know, I try to get myself informed and understand as much as I can. So when she's talking about me about something that she's really passionate about, I can follow the conversation and be like, okay, how'd you do that? And she can explain it to me, and I can, you know, really appreciate and digest what she has to say, as opposed to be like, that's nice, honey. It's just like we have that kind of mutual respect there, which is, yeah, it scores me a few brownie points. I won't lie, right? there's maybe some nefarious purpose to it. So when I'm like, oh, hey, honey, I want to put in another 40-gallon tank over this way. Is that that's not going to bother you at all? Is it just going to take away a little space? That's not that much, right?
Hey, look, it's very important, though. It's very important because appreciation, respect is actually better than just liking. Somebody can like without any engagement, but when you show appreciation and respect, you have to take into account the importance it is to somebody else, and
Yep.
that's a wonderful thing, though. Thoughtful.
Totally.
That's a wonderful thing. So, sir, I know nobody here should know. Jeffrey Watts, I see you. Hey, y'all, Chad, I haven't forgot y'all. I'm going to come back to you. Everybody here should know who you are, but give them a little insight on little Bentley, coming into the fish hobby, and bring them up to current. Just, a little overview.
Sure. So, my family has done fish for a long time. My great grandmother was breeding angelfish back in the 50s and 60s. So my mom spent a lot of her time growing up at her grandmother, my great grandmother's home, and she has an appreciation for fish. My dad was really into koi when I was young. So when I was a kid, we had this huge, like 300-gallon all glass tank downstairs that housed my dad's koi. And then we had, because out here we have lots of raccoons and possums, it's almost impossible to keep a pond outside without a ton of protections against them to keep your fish safe. Top that off, up in our upstairs, then there's like a couple 125 gallons and some other tanks all over the place. And we just had fish tanks all over the place ever since I was a small child. There's a picture of my uncle, my dad's brother, holding me when I was a little baby. I think I was like 8 or 9 months old. And then you can see me staring at a fish tank while they're talking to each other. Right. It's just, we've had fish ever since well before I could remember. But you go a little fast forward, like my first fish tank as a kid. Now, granted, I wasn't taking care of this. I was just enjoying it. Was this old, like 5 or 6 gallon, basically glass lemonade jug. One of those, like the big ones you'd see at some kind of a yard sale or something like that, where it's like, oh, you want a little glass of lemonade while it's hot in the summer while you're perusing stuff. That had a little spigot, and my dad flipped it upside down, put a little breeder box in it, and filled it full of male guppies. And that was my first fish tank as a kid. It was just this in my room, this big old glass lemonade thing to have guppies in. And as I was growing up, like my mom would take me to some of our local fish stores, and I got to pick the fish that were going into our tank. And I loved all the small schooling fish. And then we always had angelfish just because that's a family thing on my mom's side. Now you take that for 20 years of my life, get to college, and we'd slowly kind of whittled some of our tanks down because my aunt got really big into African cichlids. So we were like, oh, well, we're not keeping as many fish right now. We'll slowly empty these tanks and combine them, and we'll send our tanks to you so you can keep and breed your African cichlids. And eventually we got to the point where we only had a 55-gallon bow front, and the front bottom seam blew out on it. And at that point, I was keeping South American aggressive cichlids. So like I had a Jack Dempsey, a Red Devil, all your big angry butts that aren't super huge, right? Not like dove eyes, but your big meanie heads that like to destroy things left and right. And after that tank blew out, I was in college at the time. My cousin was living with me. I was just like, we can't afford another fish tank, and we don't have the proper materials to fix this one. So I'm going to stop doing fish for a while. 15 years later, I own my own home. I'm working in the technology field, and my current contract that I'd been working on, it was coming to an end, and I was a little stressed. And I was just perusing YouTube late at night, and by whim of fate, I came across a video from the Green Machine called Continuity. It's beautiful, shallow, planted aquascape tank. It's full of small fish and plants and rock. And I was looking at it and I was like, man, I remember fish as a kid. I love just sitting and staring and watching fish swim. I need fish again. 2 days later, I've watched like 3 years of their content. I've found a bunch of other YouTubers like Aquarium Co-op and Dustin's Fish Tanks and, King of DIY back in his old content where there's all this like cool DIY build stuff. And from there, the rest is kind of history. I bought this Fluval Flex that's behind me. I've had this thing for about 5 years now. It hadn't even arrived yet. I ordered it on Amazon because I couldn't find one at a local pet store. 2 days later, I had bought 135-gallon used off of Craigslist and already had it delivered to my house. This thing was still in the mail, and I had 135-gallon downstairs. And I was like, I'll have one little tank in my room and a big tank downstairs, and I'll do tetras and danios and all that stuff that I love. And we're getting ready to get the big tank going, and we had to do all this, like, we had to clean it and we had to fix the stand because the stand was painted this ugly yellow paint. We're sanding it down to make it wood grain and make it look decent. I had a roommate at the time, that's why I say we. And I'm catching up through Aquarium Co-op's videos at this point, and I find his tour of Gary Lang's house. Game over. I'm now a rainbow fish person. I have to have these fish. I saw Bosemani rainbows. I'd never seen them as a kid. I'd always thought that discus were like the pinnacle of aquarium fish keeping. And now I've seen rainbow fish, and I don't care anything about discus. I want those. They look amazing, and that's what I'm doing. And now, I float. It depends on what I'm doing, but I'm anywhere between 17 and about 22 tanks. And with the exception of 3 of those tanks, they're all rainbow fish.
All rainbow fish.
Yeah, I keep rainbows basically everywhere. There are very few tanks in my house that don't have rainbow fish in them. And, one of them is 2 of them are dedicated breeding tanks. And that's the only reason why they don't have rainbows. And then the third is my angelfish. So I have to have angelfish somewhere in my house or my mom will like shun me. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the journey. I got started on YouTube through a couple of contests and some really small YouTuber channels. A guy named by the name of Baron Tropicals did some contests where you had to do video replies. And there was like a Fluval bug bites contest when they first debuted that food, or it was like you could win a year's supply of fish food if you did a video. And I liked it. And from there, I just started doing more stuff. So it's kind of some of those things have always kept certain appreciations, like, coming on to channels like yours, right? I can remember thinking to myself, like, man, how cool would it be to be able to sit down and just talk with this person, somebody who was like 10,000 subscribers or 50,000, like Corey was 50,000 at the time. I can remember that when I was like 100, and just thinking like, man, how cool would it be to be able to like have Corey come over to my house, look at my tanks, or talk to Corey. And like, I go into his shop at this point, I buy at his store, I see him, and that was back when he used to be in the store. But like, how cool from a YouTube perspective would that be? I don't know. Maybe one day I'll just keep doing this because it's fun. And over time, the ball rolls, stuff happens. And it's one of those things where I have such an appreciation because I would never have started fish YouTube if not for other small fish YouTubers. So like coming on to like your show or like catching up and kind of understanding like who you are. I love that. I love that because it reminds me every time that we all start somewhere. Why not help those around us?
Yes, sir.
It's plain and simple. And it's fun just like to get to talk and meet everybody from their different perspective on the hobby. Like, we were talking before the show and you were showing me your tanks. Now you're into tetras right now. And, the first thing I comment on is like, I love the emergent growth you have going on combined with hornwort, right? It's like, I love that. Like you can tell like plants are the thing that really like tick my boxes nowadays in any given tank. Anytime I see a plant in a tank, I had this beautiful picture that came in from a viewer of mine who said, Stephen P, fantastic guy. If you ever see him in your channel, just wonderful guy. And like he was like showing me this picture of these rainbow fish he got. And the first thing I paid attention to, even in a rainbow fish tank, I was like, man, that's a really healthy Anubias you have right in this portion of your tank. That thing is looking real nice. And it's like, yeah, that's how you know. Like, he's such a plant nerd. It's the first thing you notice is this one plant that looks really, really good.
Right? Hey, I was telling you about Jeffrey Watts that's gonna be in the chat.
I see
his
him.
name right there. Rainbows. Jeffrey, you see rainbows. He's about the rainbows. Plants. Jeffrey, he's about the plants. Hey, I got Jeffrey Watts over there under. He's under wraps right now. I'm trying to talk him into letting everybody see, what he's actually doing. He's slowly coming now. He's slowly coming.
Oh, don't be afraid, man.
But
it gets way more fun when you just like embrace the psychosis that is YouTube.
Hey, right?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. That's the best. The best part about the Fish Fam is like it's so loving, it's so supportive, it's so positive. Like I come from a gaming background, and like there you get 100 people in a chat, and 99 of them are jerks. You come to a Fish Fam, and it's like 100 people in chat. Maybe every 3 weeks there's one jerk. It's such a different community compared to anything else out there, any other like hobby. So many other hobbies are so like crazy competitive. We're here. It's just like, so I heard you're in to only killifish near the Congo that are annuals only, like the most niche thing in the world. Tell me about that, because I'm into only killifish from this part of Mexico that, like all these like crazy niche things that like, you're just like, how could there be enough to hook you from this small slice of life? And then you just realize like, man, we all have something in common. We all have that thing that really drives us. But in the end, it all involves being in a glass box full of water.
Amen.
And it's such a wonderful uniting thing, because you get these people who are just like, okay, all right, rainbow fish psycho, let me tell you why, you should have got into discus, and discus are super cool. How dare you say you don't like discus? And it's done in such a positive, wonderful way, as opposed to like a vicious way that it is in other things. But it's like no, you're wrong, which we get fish police. Don't get me wrong. We get those in the comments every once in a while. That's the story of YouTube. But it's like one of those people a month, maybe. And you have like hundreds of just fantastic, wonderful people. Like chat was just bumping while we were sitting here talking pre-show. It's like all these people like, hi. You build these fantastic communities. And I love, like, that's the part about like, especially in FishTube, that is so wonderful, is that it's such a positive community. It is unlike anything else when it comes to hobbies.
Like you were saying, you were in gaming. I was in the fitness realm. I was my end. I was in the little powerlifting niche, but I like bodybuilding. I like all of that. But if you weren't patting someone else's head on there, like, hey man, that's wonderful. Hey, I can't believe you did that. Hey, look at your body. Hey, no attention. Nobody cared about what you were doing. Nobody cared about. It was all about the ego stroking over there, And, for me to get over here, to the Fish family, it's like, hey, welcome. Who are you? Hey.
Who are you?
And hey, guy, come on over here. What are you doing? And in my case, at that time, it was I forgot the name of them. Little Sterilite totes from Walmart.
Oh yeah. The little
with feeder fish,
ones, right? Yeah.
With feeder fish. I had feeder fish. Hey, I'm gonna raise these. And I'm gonna breed them. I'm thinking I'm really. Hey, I hadn't even seen these before. What are these? Mind you, I said I had fish for like almost 40 years, but I had your standard. I had your goldfish. Black moors. So. I knew fancy goldfish. I was hearing about endlers. So when I saw these feeder fish, I thought they were endlers. I'm like, oh my God, you're selling me endlers for 25 cents? I don't think you know what you have. It's like, hey, no, like, those are feeder guppies.
Sir, I don't think you know what you're buying.
No, that's exactly what it was.
But it's like, but the best part is that like, even in that scenario where like one person thinks they're getting a steal and ripping this guy off, the other person's like, I almost feel bad. I don't think this guy understands what's going on. And in the end, we're both happy because we got fish. Right?
Yes.
It's like,
and nobody
I got a new guy
on my
into this kind of
parade.
fish. Fantastic.
Yes.
So great.
They didn't dance on my parade or nothing. You know, he was like, hey, okay, man, he's really excited about these feeder fish. You know, hey, I'm not mad at him at all. Let's see who all we got. 503 Aquatics, RB Animals, R to the B, Color Guppies, James, Fish Room Fever. What's going on, sir? S. Got to pronounce it right. Dana Ritz, how you do? Madrul Singh, Nano Aquarium Guy. Melvin Reef, what's going on, little brother? Glitch Aquatics. What else we got? Who else? What we got? Nano Fish Guy, got him.
You got Susan.
Shanna, what's going on? Jeffrey Watts. You know, I can't forget you. Jeffrey Watts is my partner, people. That's my partner. Casual Aquatics, what's going on? Sunfish Assassin, hey, welcome back in the door. Welcome back. Geek Bizoy, what's going on? Stephen P, 2003, was just talking about you. You coming in late, man. Missing your
he
shout
heard me
out.
talking about him and came running.
Glitch Aquatics, Miss Susan. Hey, lady. Love you to death. Thank you for coming through. God, is that everybody?
Oh, man.
Rising Sun Aquatics, welcome. Fish Tropics, welcome. Travis Myers, welcome. Hey, y'all. If you see my wife's name on there, Isis Alexander, that's me. I'm on her tablet.
Cheating.
Yeah,
we got a good assembly of the usual suspects in here. You got a good number of people I know been around. Poking every once in a while, just kind of like, hey, how y'all doing? Man,
shout out to all of y'all.
Stephen P talking about he's already booked his hotel for the Triple Crown next year in Louisville. Which if you haven't seen that, BTH, man, dude, there's a huge gathering of all like the small things. So there's American Killifish Association, American Cichlid Association, American Library Association, and then ANGFA NA, which is the Australia New Guinea Fishes Association, aka the Rainbow Fish Nerds, are doing a combined convention at the end of July in Louisville, Kentucky next year. It's going to be a giant thing of a bunch of small groups because they're all combining and they're calling it the Triple Crown. I'm there because I got a buddy in Louisville, and he's been begging me to come out to his place. So I get to combo. I get to see a buddy. I get to go to a fish event. I'm gonna nerd the hell out. I encourage people who can to go. Tickets. I think tickets don't go on sale till like November though, if I remember right. But it's like the hotel only has so many rooms at the discount rate.
Okay.
I'm just saying, if you can make it,
get on in, huh?
Get in. Not everybody can cheat like me and have a buddy who's like, I got a room for you. You don't have to pay for a hotel. I got a car you can borrow. It's like, you're trying to sell this hard, man. You didn't need to. I was already planning on coming out. It's like, yeah. No, just come hang out at my place for a while.
Was it threatening you with a good time?
Yeah, it's like, oh, don't you threaten me again? I'm like, yeah, we can. If you're down for it, there's the Bourbon Trail. We can hit that for a day. It's like, what are you trying to do to me, man?
Hey, y'all hit that like button and share this out. So, Mr. Pascoe, how in the world? You said 5 years? You've been to YouTube? On the fish side?
I guess YouTube's more like about really actively 3, but closing in on 4, I think, now.
Okay, so would you say your knowledge gathering started back, originally when because your family was keeping fish, or when did your toes first hit the ground, knowing that this is what you wanted to know about?
So a lot of it does go back to my family. And when I was in college, especially when it was more me and my cousin taking care of tanks, at the time my cousin worked as an aquatic specialist at Petco. And thankfully, like, we grew up with a pretty nice Petco and not one of like the bad ones. But you get some bad ones every once in a while, but you get a lot of good ones too. It all depends. Like, as much as people love to bash on big box stores, like, there are plenty of places that have truly passionate hobbyists working there. It's just it's kind of a roll of the dice every time. But
Gotcha.
in that case, it was one of those things where he was really into the aggressive cichlids, and I was into small fish, and I had a lot of knowledge about how to keep fish from my parents when we kept a lot of fish when I was a kid. And he really didn't have fish. He was from the other aunt and uncle instead of the one that kept African cichlids. So he'd seen fish at all the houses whenever he'd visit the other cousins and stuff, but he never had them for himself. So finally he really wanted to get in on it. And I was like, okay. And he was like, well, teach me what I need to know. And I'm like, well, you're getting a fish I don't know, so we're going to learn together. And we would get books from the library and read to make sure that we knew what we needed to know. And the funny part is all that knowledge comes from like the 50s and 60s anyway. Books in the 80s and 90s. Most of that knowledge was based on stuff in the 50s and 60s. But really, I would say the bulk of my learning came when I came back to the hobby about 5 years ago. A little more than that now, almost. But and part of this is because of my job. I am a prolific researcher of information, in the sense that I'm very, very good at using things like YouTube and Google to learn a lot of things very, very fast. And I'm relatively fortunate that I have very good memory. So I tend to absorb information I'm super passionate about. And whenever I dive into any hobby, it's not like dip my toes in for a little while. I dive like eyeballs deep first and then just keep going deeper, because I'm such a crazy person. It's the only way to put it. I just, when I get into something, there's no like getting lightly into something. It's either all the way or nothing. And I've had a lot of different hobbies over my time, especially as a kid. Like, I had a lot of stuff I did, and it's just there's something about being in touch with nature in that very intimate, in your home way that we can with fish tanks. It's soothing. It makes stress melt away. It teaches us. It's a constant source of learning. It's a constant source of enjoyment and zen. And that is something that grips far stronger than like playing video games. And I love games. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big time gamer. But in my current work schedule, the thing I make time for is not games. It's fish. Because there is a very different enjoyment of what nature is and what nature can do, and that kind of like nature's majesty that we can somehow capture in these tiny boxes in our homes. And that just makes me just like grip into it so much deeper and harder, as I just love it so much more that it gets basically more of my brain cells than I probably should dedicate to something that isn't my career. And yet I do, happily.
Don't say that out. Say that out loud. Might get trouble.
It's so funny. Like, I'll talk about that stuff at work, and even my boss just finds it fascinating that I'm so gripped into this thing that like most people don't do, right? It's like, because like he's a fisher. He likes going out on rivers and stuff and going fishing for sport. And like the concept of keeping fish is, he's like, I never would have thought to do that. It's like, yeah, but you go to pet stores and you see fish all the time, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm a dog person. Because it's like, how do you interact with your fish? And I'm like, oh, dude, I got a fish that watches TV with me. It's like, what? I was like, yeah, I got this. I'll show him pictures of my Loach Danger Noodle. It's like, this guy, if Gordon Ramsay is on TV, he plops in the front corner of the tank and watches the TV. No joke. We've got it on video. We've seen it in pictures. My girlfriend catches it all the time when she's got random stuff on in the background. Like, there's so much more to fish that we don't realize. And it the more you catch those little things, those little like nuances, the more fascinating it becomes. You know, you got things like puffers that are basically like underwater puppies. They're or like Oscars, right? People, I'll give some shade to Oscars every once in a while, but that's mostly just to give KG Tropicals a little bit of ribbing because I know he loves them so much. But like, they're so interested in what you're doing and trying to figure that out and interacting with you that you would never expect, right? And there's other things like rainbow fish are like notorious beggars for food. They have like bottomless stomachs. So anytime you go near a rainbow fish tank, all the rainbows just go, yeah, you got some food there? Huh? Yeah, come on, look, I'm pretty. Want to give me some food? I have like those little interactions where you've got nature just right there with you. It's just such a fascinating thing that's so different, because you would think I'm keeping this thing in a box. It doesn't pay attention to me at all. And yet they pay so much attention to everything we do. Because at first they think we're a predator. And then eventually it's like, oh, that's the thing that gives me food. That's not so bad. And then eventually you get more and more, and you can get stuff where it's like, you see people that teach their bettas how to do tricks, you know, like jump through hoops and do all this stuff, where you'll see people like, you can literally reach in with their like blood parrots and they want to be pet, like they're a cat or a dog. You know, there's so many little like nuance and interesting things in the fish world that I think as people were to experience them, especially kids, it's amazing how fascinated little kids get with fish, and to see them and spark that so that they can see why you appreciate something so much. It's like, it's just, I don't know. There's something gripping about it that makes you want to just not just dive like a little bit into it, but a lot of it into it. And I think that's the reason why this hobby has driven me to such a level to be like, yeah, not only do I want to be like good at it myself, I'm also going to be psycho enough to do YouTube as a hobby of my hobby and help other people be good at it too. Because I want everyone to enjoy it as much as I do. I want everyone to get the level of appreciation and satisfaction in nature in your home that I have. Because it constantly is something where I can just sit, I can look at my fish and just be like, doesn't matter what my day is. Right now, this is perfect. Right. This is all I need. Absolutely perfect. You know, it's such a magical thing.
Most definitely. Hey, Fish Tropic, I'm still in my fish room. I just like to move my camera around at different angles. You just never know what you're gonna see behind me. But man, I feel what you say. Hey, what you're saying so much. I have one more to add to your list. Golden Wonder killifish. When I turn my camera, I have a little half-inch. I mean, we talking about fry, a little half-inch. No, he might be an inch. I ain't gonna do him like that. Sitting right here in the corner of this tank, you know, looking at me. This is a fry. Now, we know the adults are so attentive. I mean, literally like puppy dogs, always want to eat something. If you put your hand in the water, they're going to get in your hand. You know, I mean, they'll lose all fear. But you better watch them because they'll come out of your tank. But,
oh, yeah. Killies are notorious jumpers, man. They got either a death wish or just an excessive love for exploration. You choose which one that you prefer.
yes, look, I don't, I don't know. He's not realizing, hey, man, you're a good home. We have this relationship, this rapport. We're cool. They're not coming in there like they just, to die, trying to live out here. I think that's what it is. They're trying to live out here with us.
Yeah. Well, as I say,
But that's real.
That tank I had where we blew the seam, we used to have this one bala shark that had outlived all the rest. Anytime you walked past the tank and stopped long enough to actually pay attention to it, he would jump out.
Oh.
And under this tank is slate flooring. So he'd be jumping out, landing on slate. I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You have to chase this dumb guy. Like, then you're bashing yourself into levels of less and less intelligence, guys. Stop it. Just please stop. And we couldn't. It was so, I remember it was so hard for us back then because me and my cousin were in college, right? We had like no spare money. And it was like, how do we afford a lid for this thing? We'd got this tank with no lid. So we could stop this dumb thing from jumping out. And eventually I rigged up saran wrap around the top of the tank so that he would hopefully not break through the saran wrap as he jumped. I remember because we had all the saran wrap, we had one teeny tiny hole in it so we could feed our fish in order to protect from this one dumb bala shark that kept jumping out.
And he didn't find that hole, did
he? Thankfully, no. We kept it pretty small. It was basically designed only to fit like a cube of food through. So, because you'd feed like beef heart and stuff to those big cichlids that were in there, but just the measures you go through with some of your fish, it's like, what can I do?
Nerve. The nerve. Oh man, Kenny E, what's going on? Welcome in, sir. My goodness, dude. So, what would you say? I don't want to throw obsession on you. I don't want to do that.
No, obsession's fine. Obsession's fine. It's obsession's accurate.
Right now, what season of obsession are you in?
Season of obsession? I would say I'm in with fall. I mean, we're shifting to fall. It's kind of, we've got a lot of things in my fish room that are getting out of like the flowering phase of stuff when it comes to plants, and kind of chilling it down a little bit, trying to relax so that as the times outside change, we're bringing it down, we're relaxing. I get the cooler weather, so that means that my guppy mansion is going to start giving me more female babies instead of more males, because that warmer weather I always get more boys. I've noticed this with my fish. I get all these like little things.
You would say that I want you to keep going after this, but would you say that works? The temperature, because I like to hear you say it. I like to hear you say that because it's been like
it's something. I know with certain species of live bearers, temperature does affect the fry's ratios, and they've even got in chat talking about it. But I've just noticed with my particular strain of the Blue Hawaiian Moscow that when I get to cooler temperatures and we're not seeing as much sun, I get more females. And when I get to summer and spring and the temperatures warm up, there's more sunlight coming in through the windows in that room, and that water sits a little hotter, I get more boys. But that doesn't affect all fish, because the ratios that when I was able to more reliably breed rainbow fish, because they're such a finicky fry to raise, the hotter the temp typically just sped up the process and really didn't affect my gender ratios all that much. Or if it did, if I got warmer, I'd see more females and less males. So it was the opposite of what I see in my live bearers. And from my knowledge, or at least to what I've talked to some people, because I don't breed angels, but I've got them, I haven't seen too much like gender ratio stuff occurring at temperature, but for the most part, the people I know that breed them keep them at a steady like 83 degrees. So maybe it's just that's the sweet spot for them. that gets a pretty good 50-50 mix. But I'll tell you, live bearers,
Okay.
in my experience, which is minimal, I only keep like one strain, and I've kept a few others over the past, but as that temperature cools off, we get more toward that like 72, 74 kind of temperature, more girls. You get up to like 78 and 80, maybe even a little over 80 on real hot summer days, like when we had the big heat wave and it was like over the 110 here in Washington, which is unheard of. Way more boys. Like sometimes it'll be 80% boys coming out of my fry.
Okay. So that's why, I mean, I've been hearing it for so long, but I never get over 80 degrees. Like, so I guess my temperature swings are never extreme enough, because I'd get around 76 thinking I'm really doing something. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I'd never get over 80. It just makes me nervous.
Well, I try not to, but every once in a while when it's just so naturally hot outside, there's only so much like temperature control the house can do, you know?
Gotcha.
Especially in a room where I'm trying to keep that room warmer naturally with a dehumidifier, and I've got it sealed in a way that limits the cooler air from the rest of the house. But I had to when we had that big heat wave, I had to vent it every way I possibly could, because otherwise it would get like 90 degrees in there and it'd fry everything.
Ooh. I have a fan under my chair
turn
now.
the dehumidifier off, because then I'm going to end up with a sauna in that thing, and I'm going to end up with a bunch of mold all over my walls, which then that's a no-no. Right. You know, it's like,
yeah, no,
playing that game in it.
No,
it was not fun, but you know, learn some lessons. I'll tell you, learn some lessons.
Learn is the key word.
Oh yeah.
We don't want to go.
Always be learning. Always be learning. That's a big one in fish. Always learn something.
How did you get so enthralled with the plant side of aquatics?
Oh man, I've got my talk that I gave to my club kind of covers that a little bit. That's going to come out on my channel relatively soon. So, watch out for that. But
don't give up too much on here now.
The big thing is I loved that concept of truly making something more natural, more nature, and less like, here's SpongeBob's pineapple hut and a broken pirate ship, and you know what you're pointing at. I know, I see you. But, and it didn't come. It came from a lot of watching like some of the aquascapers and being like, man, I kind of want to try that, and then realizing I can't aquascape, but I can grow plants, which I never thought I'd be good at, because I'm terrible at like terrestrial gardening. Keeping things alive in a garden, I struggle at, unless it's basically unkillable, like rhododendrons. It has to be something that's basically like, you have to actively try to kill this thing to kill it. But I started, and this was like I said, this is my first tank that I started with, and I killed all the plants that I had at first in this tank. But I'm such a persistent, never give up mentality human being that I was like, all right, what did I do wrong? Learn, find out what you did wrong, and fix it. It's that the part of me in my career, right? I work as a software and hardware test engineer. So like, I break things for a living, but my goal is to break it in a way that we can figure out how to fix the problem. That's that engineer side. I want to fix problems. So I just kept working and kept working and kept working until all of a sudden I had my first bit of success with Pogostemon stellatus octopus, which people will laugh because that plant is pretty much bulletproof. But I had other plants that were bulletproof in my tank before, and I killed them. Just because I didn't understand that they were converting. They were going from immersed grown plants to submerged grown plants. And they weren't actually dead. I was giving up on them too early. I wasn't giving them enough time and patience to do what they need to do as a part of their natural process. And as soon as I had success with the first one, I then understood that concept and that light switch came on. I joined my local club, the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society, and they had a program, Horticulture Awards. And I was like, I don't know. I don't care about that kind of stuff. And then I get our first newsletter, and it's like, here's the mystery plant of the month. If you've participated in the horticulture program, you can participate in this program and get free plants. Oh, I'm a sucker for value. Free plants? You are speaking my language. So the next month, October of 2017, you better be ready. I had plants submitted. I was ready. The next plant of the month came up, and from there on out, every plant of the month I participated in, and almost without fail, I always won one of the plants. And I just kept growing and kept growing and kept growing. And the more that I got into plants, it became a personal game. My personal improvement, my competition, because I'm a super competitive person. I used to play sports, despite being a fat bastard. I played a lot of sports as a kid. I used to play Magic hyper competitively when I was younger, and even when I was older later on. So I play all sorts of competitive video games when I used to play regularly. I am a inherently competitive person, but I changed my mindset as I got older to only competing with myself instead of other people. Because what I realized as a personal thing is that if I compete against one person, as soon as I beat them, and then I beat them reliably, it's not fun anymore. But if I'm competing with myself, it's an infinite game. There is no point at which I cannot grow and learn more. I cannot become better. There is always more room to grow, more room to improve. And that triggers a very different mentality. So like we have a Master Aquatic Horticulturalist Award, which for most people takes 6 months to a year to complete. Depends on how aggressive you want to be. I had my first one in 3 months. And then 4 months after that, I had 2 more. And I just recently completed my 10th. And I've been doing it for 4 years. So at my basically 4-year anniversary of submitting plants to my club, I achieved my 10th Master Aquatic Horticulturalist Award. And now I'm kind of like, I guess I could probably slow down a little bit. I have been working a lot. I think I've done a few of these. I could probably slow down a little bit. And yet, despite saying that, I got 4 new plants at my last club meeting that I've never grown before. And they're all in my farm tank so that I can grow them out and submit to my horticulture awards program.
And that's after 10.
Yeah. Because it's a game. It's a game for me. I'm so competitive in that sense of like always wanting to strive to be the best of anything I can be. And I apply that in my work life, and I apply that in my home life. And in my home life, it's with aquatics now. Where I apply that hyper competitive side is always trying to be learning and better at plants and fish than I was a month ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever it may be. Always striving to get better. Because I'm a crazy person.
Man. But that's all right, though. That is all right, because, I mean, surmounting the pinnacles, man, because, oh, my goodness. Hey, Jeffrey, watch your hearing, man. Going in hard on the plants, man. Going in hard on the plants. And you said that's at your club. Where is that? Where are you?
So that's the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society. So Seattle area of Washington.
So can Jeffrey Watts enter that like through Skype or over through the mail?
Probably not. So unfortunately, in the case of most of the clubs, they want you to be somewhat local. The most that we've seen is we've got some people that like would travel up from Oregon every once in a while, but they would travel to all our meetings. So then they could participate in those programs. It's kind of like the old school thing where they don't want like a million people doing things digitally. They want people to actually like be there in the club activities. But that being said, I'm working on an online aquatic horticulture program to where people can earn a master aquatic horticulturist certificate through me. And there's some philosophy behind this. So most of the programs that are out there through clubs are actually exploitable, in the sense that almost all of them are a point-based system. And in a point-based system, there is always a way to exploit things. And this is that part of me being a tester at heart, where like I can look at a program and go like, I know how to break this. And sometimes I do it on purpose. Like I've purposely broken parts of our system in my own club to be like, do you see where we need to change this? And they're like, we're not that worried. You're the only one who's ever done this. So it's basically just you that we'd be fixing it for. That's a fair point. I'm the one jerk. All right, good to know. Well, I'll just keep doing what I do and having my fun. But the thing is, what I learned in my kind of own personal competition with myself is, as I broke our system that was point-based, I realized that the more that I just got myself an all-around understanding of plants and tried every type of plant, whether it was an epiphyte or a rosette or a stem or mosses or whatever it may be, I learned different little tricks, and all these things that made them work better as a class. So like, as I learned one thing with Ludwigia, I could apply it with Pogostemons. As I learned certain things with Rotalas, I learned that, oh, hey, Ludwigias can do this little random niche thing too. So it applies to more than just the one type of stem. And the same can be said for like rosettes. You could learn things with crypts that apply to swords and vice versa. You can learn all these things that like really affect one thing a lot, but kind of affect all the things that grow like that a little bit. And so the program I'm designing is designed to basically force the users to learn a little bit about every major category of plant in order to actually understand all those principles and actually master growing aquatic plants. Because you could, in a point-based system, grow only species of Rotala. And as long as the requirement to become master aquatic horticulturist is just gain X points, well, there's a million different Rotalas out there. So if I grow only Rotalas, do I know how to grow Anubis, Java Fern, Nymphaeas, all these other things that grow so significantly different? No, you don't understand how to grow those correctly, or how to have the great success with those, how to propagate them, how to flower them in some cases. You don't learn those things. A point system can be exploited. Something that forces you to learn a lot about everything can't be exploited, and teaches you along the way through self-interest, self-intrigue, self-education. So that's my goal in the program that I'm building. Plus, as an online program rather than a physical club, it doesn't matter where you live. You can participate. That's my goal. That's like my grand design as a kind of a gift to the hobby, is to do something that I love and make it available to anyone. But then again, having a master aquatic horticulturist certificate from some crazy psycho named Bentley in Seattle doesn't mean anything. It's not like you're going to magically make money because you have that thing. It's about you learning enough about that thing to where that title doesn't necessarily matter. That piece of paper doesn't matter. The learning that you get in that process is what matters, because it will elevate your capability in the hobby no matter what.
Yeah. And that's the key, because everybody in and around it will know what it is that you have learned, or you're learning, because they see it, as opposed to, so the title, yes, don't count yourself short, because for those nerds, it will mean something. I mean, it's like, man, I made a conscious decision to take this on. Everything, every aspect to it, all the things that I have to learn, all the times I have to put in to learn these things. And then here's a project. here's a project. Even if you're doing it, because you have some people who just the gratification of the competition aspect, they're being forced to learn. To get to that level, they still have to learn it.
Yep. Yeah, and it's kind of it's a double-edged sword, right? If I can get 100 people to go through that program, in theory, that means by hook or by crook, I've made 100 aquarists better. even if it's ever so slightly, man. It's that hope. It's that natural positive mentality of like, I'm gonna find a way to impact this hobby, even if it's in a very small fashion, because I want to be able to know that the knowledge isn't wasted. If we can spread that knowledge, one of the biggest like problems that I've always had with kind of your older fish keepers, so my dog is losing its mind, is when you'll get that old mentality of like, oh, I know this secret and I'm not going to tell anybody else because it's mine. And it's like, well, then how do you help anyone else get better? If they're struggling with something and your secret helps them no longer struggle, does it actually help anyone for you to keep that secret? Where instead, if you spread it around, raise all ships. Don't just raise one, raise all ships. Be the rising tide. It's better for everybody. I want to be the rising tide.
Right.
I want to raise all ships, not just my ship.
Gotcha. Good night, Susan. We love you. Sweet dreams, most definitely.
I guess over here. I gotta figure out which side you can see my hand.
Right. Happens to me often. Fishy Biz Aquatics. About time, man. I saw your name way up the chat earlier. I thought you were in here already. So they tried to manifest you. So in your flu ball back there, what fish do you have in it?
So this actually, it's got very few fish in it right now. It has one super red short fin bristlenose. It has two reticulated Siamese algae eaters, and it has one remaining of a group of Melanda gold. So that's the Melanitania species. It's unnamed, but they come from Wallace Road. So this is a fish that they're going extinct in the wild because someone let loose a different type of rainbow fish. They started hybridizing in their natural habitat. And there's a small group of scientists in Australia that have been trying to protect them and basically breeding them and moving them to a new location where no other rainbow fish exist, but that is very close to where they exist, that's isolated so that fish survives. And those fish are from Dean, so Master Breeder Dean, that everybody sees on the Aquarium Co-op channel. He had a bunch of them, and the only ones that survived because he was struggling with them were all males. And he was actually, yeah, I'm just going to get rid of these fish. And he was like, do you just want them? Do you just want to keep them? And they're a dwarf. They stay really small. They only get like 2.5 to 3 inches. And I was like, yeah, I'll just put them in my little Flu Ball Flex behind me. I gave away a bunch of guppies that were in there to a friend for her niece's first fish tank. And I was like, here, just take all the guppies. You can have them. These little sunset guppies. They're beautiful little fish. They'll get to watch baby fish get born. It'll be amazing. It'll hook the niece right away. They'll love it. It'll be the same thing that happened when, I was a kid, where you watch all these things with fish and you're just like fascinated by it. And eventually as an adult, you like go down this rabbit hole and become a crazy person on YouTube. But, I was like, yeah, I've got this empty tank. I wasn't sure what I was going to put in it. Now I know what I'm putting in it. I'm going to take your males, and they're just going to live out the rest of their lives, because they only live, the dwarf rainbows live a lot shorter than some of the big boys. These guys only live like 5 years or so, and it's down to just the one remaining, like the smallest boy out of the whole group is the one that's left in there. And just I've just been letting them live out their life until they're done, giving them a place. They kind of have been in the background, and whenever that last fish dies, I'll probably tear this whole tank down and try something different at some point. Cause it's, I don't show it very often, but like in the Flex, it has this plastic divider that's here. You can barely see the top, but the silicone that's in there that holds it in place is like broken down because this is one of the really early ones. So there's actually this area where the plastic backing is pushed in a bow because of the water pressure in the substrate. Basically, it's not properly holding the chambers separate correctly anymore. So like when people freak out about my water level in this thing all the time, they don't know that that's that thing off screen they can't see that keeps the water level fine universally in the tank, is because there's this bow that has occurred over time when the silicon failed. So the water flows back to the pumping chamber no matter what, and around the sponge no matter what. Even though it's like getting up to the slits way up top. And I was just like, yeah, it'll live out its life. Those fish will stay there for a while, and then when they're finally done, and it's just like the bristle nose and the SAEs, they'll move to my big kind of like retirement house downstairs, and this tank will get torn down and turned into something different. You know, I'll rip it apart and probably rip the backing out of it, turn it into just a little sponge filter, and redo it. But until that point, they get to live out their life. I don't often tear my tanks down. They're designed once, and then they go for years.
No, definitely. That's cool. What would you say? First, what are all the fish that you have right now, as best as you can do it?
Okay, well, we'll do the easy ones. So we have blue Hawaiian Moscow guppies, and in with them are a small group of spotted garas, which is a really cool gara species that only gets about 2.5, 3 inches long, and then autosynclus. I have super red bristlenose in like 15 of my 20 tanks because I have a bunch of young that I got from a friend, and then I have running river rainbows. They're in their own special tank, which they're kind of, I call them my crown jewel because they have such a special story. A lot like the Mwandas, they were in a place where some other rainbow fish got there. They started hybridizing. These scientists on $11,000 saved them and moved them to 2 different co-locations. And now the populations are doing fantastic. Otherwise, they were going to go extinct in the wild. And they're this beautiful fish that, like, once you get them colored up, especially in a planet tank, they're mesmerizing because they stay small. They're only like 3 inches, 3.5 inches tops for like a really full-size male. And unlike most of the other dwarf rainbows, they're actually fairly long-lived. So they've been going strong as can be ever since I got them as eggs years ago. Then you go to my grow racks, which are no longer being used to grow fry. They were at first, but there's Chilatherina eleni wapoga, Melanitania etnaensis. These are all rainbow fish. if that wasn't obvious. Melanitania species earwur, more super red bristle nose, more super red bristle nose, more super red bristle. Like every one of those tanks has super red bristle nose. Melanitania calimoisi, which is a beautiful like orangish, purplish kind of in the fins rainbow that's a little newer to the hobby. Some of my babies from my honeycomb plecos, the honeycomb ancestors, the Wabenmuster pleco is what people more commonly know it. They're a pleco that's came out of Germany and it was originally collected out of the wild. So they're a wild fish, but it was only one group of Germans that got a hold of them before they were export banned. Then go over and there's Melanitania parva, Chilatherina, oh wow, I'm spacing on one of them. Another rainbow in there with them. And then you move over. There's my Leopoldi angelfish. I have freshwater sponges that are living in that tank, which is Bob, the freshwater sponge, is people who watch my channel. There's also Wabenmuster plecos in there, some SAEs and some autosynclus. Below that are my Centoniensis rainbows, which are really fantastic. The next tank over to that, this is just one room before we go crazy. The next tank over from that is my Bozemanaya Tinjo from Gary Lang. There's some more Chilatherina eleni wapoga. There's Melanitania picta. There's one turquoise random run, one turquoise rainbow that I adopted for somebody. And some more adult Calimoises that are too big to go with my younger ones. There's one pair in there. Then we go to my front room where there's my Chilatherina blaheri, which is the party animal. I love that fish, along with my Melanitania frederici. Notice lots of rainbow fish. This is going to be a pattern here. And in that particular tank has a bunch of random Corydoras. So there's some bronze Corys, there's some Sturbae, there's a few Emerald Brocus, and then some Adolphoi Corys. So it's like just a hodgepodge mixture of Corydoras that are in that tank, as well as Danger Noodle, the Dojo Loach. Below that is my two adult breeding pairs of the Wabamooster plecos. So where my babies come from are from those adults. I need to get much better at breeding them because I'm like not paying too much attention. They're just like eating and then not paying much attention to their fry at all, and the fry aren't doing well. But I've been working too much, to be honest. So that's that problem. Then we go to the other room. This is in front. It used to be called my display room, although it's slowly kind of getting torn down. And there's a big display tank that has a bunch of roseline sharks, which I love. I've got a group of 9 of them at full size. They're big adults. They just school around. They're such a fantastic fish if you get them to adult size. They're just big boys, and they need a lot of room to swim. There's more Bozemanii rainbows that are actually wild-caught Bozemanii in there. There's kind of a hodgepodge of other mixtures of rainbows that are in there that are like, this is my retirement tank. And then some more super red bristlenose and some big fat old SAEs that are absolutely monstrous lethargic things that just like sit on the bottom of the tank until I feed them, and then they come flying up for the food and then go be lazy again. They barely hunt for algae, jerks. And my last tank is full of a bunch of wild caught Melanitania rubrostriata, which is a pretty cool fish, especially as they get to adulthood, because they have these beautiful red lines and these like black and yellow fins, just absolutely gorgeous stunner of a fish. And in there are 2 green dragon bristlenose longfin plecos that I got for $5 at AGA 2 years ago that have slowly grown. And I probably need to feed them much more than I am because they're not like huge. They're only about like yay instead of yay and fat. So I probably need to feed them more than I have been, but they've been doing just fine. And that sums up all of my fish that I'm actively keeping to the best of my memory. I know, crazy, right? A little too much. Oh, wait, I forgot one tank. My brother-in-law, who lives with me and my lady, so her brother, has his tank that we set up on his channel. It's a completely low-tech tank. He's got one really awesome, like Nemo koi betta fish, and then we just added a small group of panda cories to that tank. So he's got 7 panda cories and his betta in this little 15-gallon planet tank that we set up for him.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's now all the tanks.
Okay.
I can't
remember all the names.
I can't forget Atticus. I would be shunned if I forgot that beautiful betta of his.
Man, remembering all the names of those rainbows, though.
I told you, man, I retain so much useless information as far as my career is concerned. But as far as fish are concerned, it's very good at retaining that information.
Man. Look. I'm the ADHD king. Like, if I don't repeat it to myself every day, God forbid I go a day or 2 without saying whatever it is and it's gone.
But wait, there's more. Go to the comments. Nice. Very nice.
Man, that is great. Hey, you said rainbow. The German pleco.
Yes, the Wabamooster.
What P number would that be? Are they P's? What is the?
So they're a bristlenose. I can't remember if they have a. You can look them up. Let me see here. I can't remember if they have a specific L number or P number or whatever it is.
L, yeah, L. There you go.
Well,
I know it's one of them.
I swear there's a ton of different.
Yeah, Jim P said he liked rainbow.
Yeah, just I kind of appreciate rainbow fish. So there's looking at Planet Catfish, which usually has the Loricariidae database really well down, they don't have a specific L number for these guys. They're a standard, basically bristlenose tank that comes from one specific spot in one river. Let's see if I can remember it. I'm trying to find the big thing is so they come out of Brazil in the Yaguas Nature Reserve, which you're not allowed to collect from anymore, because they came before that kind of ban happened. And it was one group of German fish collectors that got a hold of this fish, and it proliferated all over Germany. It's really cool. So especially when they're young, their body is really like a honey yellow kind of color, and it has this black lacy pattern that makes it look like honeycombs all over their body. And then they have these big like orange seams on their tails. And as they become adults, the males get really dark, but whenever they're trying to court females, they brighten up and they become as yellow as this little thing of fish food behind me. And you see that pattern again. And the females just stay that color and pattern the whole time. Yeah, there you go. You see that pattern right there. They're beautiful, beautiful pleco. I love them.
Yeah, I really like that.
And it's really fun to watch the adult males, because when they shimmy out of their cave and they're just sitting at the cave entrance, and you see them go from like almost black to where you can barely see that pattern to like neon yellow. They're so vibrant in their color, and you see that pattern all over the place, and they're just like, ladies, I'm ready. Come to my cave. Yeah, just like that. Like there's a male that's like out trying to court. That color is, you can't miss it. You see it half the room away, no problem. We'll be sitting. It's so funny. My lady and I will be sitting on the weekends, and when some of the boys are out after a nice good water change, where I bring in that water, like I keep that tank about 75 degrees, and I'll do a cold water change. I'll put in like 70-degree water at a 50% to try and trigger them to spawn, right, to fake like it's rainy season. They just come shimmying out of their caves. They're just bright, and they're just bright all day. You just sit, and they just no fear whatsoever. My little corgi will run past them. They don't care. They're not scared of that. They're not scared of the fuzzball that barks. It's time. It's time to attract me some girls. You know, it's such a crazy thing, but it's such a cool ancestress, and it's getting some distribution now because you're starting to get more and more of them in the United States. Finally, I think more people should keep them because they're not terribly expensive. Even if you buy on Aquabit, I think they're maybe like $50 a fish, which for like a kind of rare pleco is not that expensive. It's not like you're talking zebra plecos where it's like, yeah, get ready to spend $250 a fish. Have fun. But they also breed in kind of smaller batches too. That's the interesting thing about them. Unlike most of your like your super red bristlenose or your regular bristlenose or albinos or even green dragons, they don't have these like big clutches of 50 or 60 babies at a time. They have like 20. But they'll spawn reliably every month. So as long as you know how to keep them rolling and get babies, you'll have a good supply of babies going, and they grow up pretty fast. They're just like any other ancestress. Within a year to a year and a half, they're adult and they're sexually mature. It's not like zebra plecos where you need 3.5 years. And then you got to figure out, do I have males and females? I certainly hope so. They cost me $200+ per fish. And
it should be guaranteed.
Yeah, except it's not. That's the problem. That's what makes them such a pain and so expensive. Other than their export ban, you can't wild collect them anymore. But you know,
man, that's crazy.
Oh, we have
those are nice because I had never heard of them, man. Hadn't seen them.
They're cool. They're super cool. If I was more, I've been threatening to try and get one of my like pleco breeder friends to take a bunch from me and breed them, because she's really, really good at prolifically breeding her fish. The problem is she's running out of space because she has too many babies. She's got several of her baby tanks now. They have so many babies. She has to do 50% water change every day, despite all her filtration, because she's just bred so many babies. So she's been working with like a bunch of places trying to, and for those in chat, if you know Alyssa Bentley, that's who I'm talking about. She's been working with local stores, and she even went down to like the wet spot as a distributor, be like, all right, how many fish are you willing to take from me? And how often? Because she breeds so many plecos, and she's very good at it. And I've been threatening her, like, I'm going to force her to like take a pair of my Wabenmoosters and breed them so that somebody's getting more of them out there instead of relying on me, who's like, oh yeah, I bred a few of them, and all these babies survived out of that clutch. I had like 3 of them actually make it because I'm so not actively trying to raise them right now. So it's just random as to whether or not the the dad actually does his job or not.
Yeah. But they are so pretty though. I mean, I would think if they were out for people to see, to know that they are, they are in existence, man. Hey, because plecos, it still surprises me, the market for
Yeah,
pleco.
for a fish that hides all the time.
It just surprises me. The zebra pleco scenario, man. Woo, I'm like, my God, okay, they're pretty, but I have like one pleco that I haven't seen since May. She might be still alive.
I'll see them there.
She might be still alive, but I haven't seen her. And it's my fault. She was in a 20-gallon long till I moved to the apartment that I'm in. Now she's out on the porch or the balcony with like my Buenos Aires, and they have their outdoor thing going out there.
Mm.
It's a perfect storm for her, but yeah, she's like, no need for you to see me. I'm good in here. It's living is living is good. No
I got this nice
competition.
place to hide and food showing up. I ain't going nowhere.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yep. 6 inches of hair algae all across the bottom of the little pond. And hornwort like crazy on the top. Hey, she's just there. Do you have a dream fish?
A dream fish. So it was the zebra pleco. I had a colony of zebra plecos that I lost, and I will eventually do them again, despite how cost prohibitive they are. But I love that fish. Other than that, I have a lot of the fish that I've always wanted. I think the difference is doing it in a way that I want. So what I would like to do is to get a very, very large water system. So something like 900 plus gallons, and see a large school of rainbows. So something where you actually get them more like they're in the wild, where you could have 100 Bozemanii in one tank. Because as you get more and more rainbows, you see very different behavior out of them. They're the way that you can actually watch them properly school tightly in a tank when you get 15 or 20 or 30 all of the same species instead of a mixed group. It's such an interesting thing to see. So one of the things that I've always kind of my what I like to refer to as one of my eccentric millionaire dreams, or if I ever won some crazy lotto, the first fish thing I would do is build a giant tank and try to get only 2 species and see if in large enough numbers do they separate into 2 different schools with a big enough water system, or will they still intermingle? Because if I have Chilatharina, so different genus, and Melanitania, will they school separately with only themselves, or will they intermingle like they do in smaller aquariums? That's like a kind of crazy person experiment that I have in my head to see what will happen.
Gotcha.
So that's more my dream scenario. It's usually not one fish. It's more like a fish I already have and appreciate, but putting them in huge water systems where I can do things that I can't possibly do in a normal fish tank.
Gotcha. Very cool, very cool. And they will naturally separate like that.
Well, I'm wondering if they will. That's my
Okay.
curiosity. Will they separate? Because they exist in the wild in different locations within the same water system. So, especially like the Australian rainbows, they'll be in the same creek or river, but they're in different portions of it, living in their own separate pod. So, if you were to get them intermixed genus to genus, would they stay all the Chalathrinas or all the Glossolepis in one group and all the Melanitanias in another group? Or will they just intermingle because they're a bunch of rainbows, and rainbows don't care. In most of our smaller glass boxes, they just don't care. You get them in a 125 gallon, a 75 gallon, a 55, whatever it is, they intermingle. They don't see, oh, you're only a bozeman eye, I only hang out with you. It's like, oh, are you a rainbow fish? Just period. Cool, let's hang out. Just kind of one of the things that makes rainbow fish popular is you can get a group of just only males. You can have one of this and one of that and one of that, and they'll school together, no problem. They'll hang out together, no problem, because they're fairly peaceful fish. But what happens when we have a big enough water system to where we could get big groups together? So even if it's like 40 fish in a 900-gallon tank of each genus, what happens? Do they stay separate or do they just intermingle the whole time?
Right.
That's one of the things I would love to be able to see.
Why are rainbow enthusiasts so excited about not keeping different rainbows together and keeping them pure?
I think a lot of that just comes down to rainbows fit their name. They come in every color you can think of. You can find a rainbow fish that is any given color with a little wiggle room in your imagination of perception of color, right? You have fish that come out and they're like a mauve color. It's the Clausioensis. You have bozeman eye where the front is one color and the back is another. You have these beautiful blue fish in turquoise. You have powder blue in the praecox, the dwarf neon rainbows. You have brilliant yellow fish in the yellow rainbow, the Herbert axelrada. You have all sorts of reds. You have blacks. You can get yellows. You can name a color practically, and you can find it in a rainbow fish. You have the emerald rainbow that's all beautiful green with long finnage. It looks like a tattered flag as they get old. You can get all these different, and there's nuance in the color too. You can get ones that are more flat and not as metallic. You can get other ones that are more metallic in their color in the same color. You can get the pseudo-incisis versus the incisis, so the Millennium Red Rainbow versus the regular Irian Rainbow or the Red Rainbow. One is metallic, one's more flat in its color. They're both red, but they're distinct to the eye within an instant. Within an instant, you can look at the two and know that those are different fish because of their color. And then to top all that off, if you get them in sunlight, they have this incredible iridescence in all of them that shows all sorts of colors depending on which species of fish there is. Some of them, they'll get almost like an oil slick going down their body. They show so much color. You can get golds, you can get brasses, you can get silvers in the females, and then the males can be bright red in the same species. You have such a mixture of color that you can keep them, yes, mixed, but when you breed them, when you interbreed them and crossbreed them, it's not like cichlids. You do cichlids and you crossbreed them and you get all these really crazy things that look look at flower horns, right? Flower horns are a crossbreeding species. You're making something that is crossing genetics. But when you cross the genetics of rainbows, about 80% of the time they produce this dull, brown, boring fish. But when you keep them pure, they're beautiful. And to top, if that wasn't enough, if their base color wasn't enough, when the boys are courting, the females are sparring, their colors change. They light their foreheads up with a completely different color than the rest of their body. They'll flare their fins. Their colors intensify, darken, lighten, shift, change. The iridescence becomes more apparent or disappears entirely. each one of them has something unique and special to them. And there's thousands of them, many of them that we haven't discovered because they live in parts of New Guinea that are under constant, basically, tribal warfare. So it's not safe for collectors to go find them. Like Stephen P. in chat just said, it's like the Las Vegas Strip. There's color everywhere. They're incredible in that fashion. And that's why a lot of us, you get these like, I don't get why rainbow fish keepers are such purists. Why don't you just mix them all together? It's because you get this like ugly brown fish. I've got one in my tank downstairs that somehow, fish bred in the big retirement house because they'll breed until they're so old they can't live anymore. They don't care. There's no optimum age. It's basically from 6 months on, they'll breed. And it's like this kind of brownish, brass colored, all over the place fish. And you can tell, you just look at him and like, that guy sticks out like a sore thumb in the worst way. Not like, look at that super colorful fish compared to all these other ones that aren't. It's like, look at all those colorful fish, and then that one kind of ugly one. And that's one of the things I think that makes us such crazies when it comes to being like, no, don't interbreed your rainbows. Because the other thing is that so much of their habitat in general is under threat of extinction, that keeping them pure matters so much to the hobby, because we don't know if they're going to go extinct or not. There's fish that are pretty new to the hobby that we're pretty confident after that collection trip, they're no longer in the wild anymore, but we don't have anybody out there in these super remote locations to check right now. So we're guessing, because they're supposed to be in this one part of this creek, and instead we found them in this drainage ditch to the side of the creek and none in the creek itself. So they're probably extinct in the wild.
Right.
That's an example of just one. There's others where they've been adding, the local tribes are adding tilapia as food fish. Well, the tilapia are killing all the rainbows. That's the Wanamensis, the emerald rainbow, was like that. They added Lake Wanam, they added a bunch of tilapia to it. The tilapia took over. The last major time they went collecting emerald rainbows, which was back in like 2005 or something like that, they were able to, after a full day, only collect 80 total fish. The population had been so decimated by tilapia that they could barely find anything in this huge lake that used to have tens of thousands of fish. They barely found 80. So that's the other reason why a lot of us what we call ourselves bowheads, most frequently, us rainbow keepers, though, we're so like, do not mix your rainbows. Label them, keep them separate, let them breed, let them do their thing. Don't mix them, because we never know when they're going to be extinct. Some of the fish are extinct in the wild, and the Centoniensis is an example. The only reason that fish exists is because of hobbyists. It is completely extinct in the wild. It is beautiful. The females have this lovely green color with a little bit of like rust red across their bellies. And the boys, they start with that rust red, but when they're out sparring, they go like scarlet crimson and their fins are black. They're amazing. And they are super, super fast swimmers. They're like torpedoes in the water, and you watch them swim around. And you just see all this fluttering of color because you see the little bits of green on the females. You see these black fins on both. And then you see these incredible reds that pop up from the boys. And they'll zip back and forth in a 40-gallon tank like it's 3 inches. They're so fast. So you're just watching like these laser streaks of color flying around. That's just because you fed them breakfast. Not to mention that they're not even trying to spawn yet. That's just, hey, it's breakfast time. The lights have turned on. Let's put on a show. They're not even trying to impress the girls yet. That's one rainbow species, and they're all like that. They're all incredible.
Aquaball says he has Maria Z rainbow. No, those are. He said he was trying to breed them.
I'd have to look. It would depend.
He said, "What's the best tank size to breed rainbow?
So it depends on your group. If your goal is to try and like kind of colony breed them a little bit, and certain ones will colony breed well, I would say a 40-gallon breeder. If you're only doing like one male to two females and they're anywhere between 3 inches and 4.5 inches, you can get away with just a standard 20-gallon. I would say the preference would be like a 29 or a 20 long to give them a little more footprint. But if your just goal is to like breed them, let them for like a week or two lay a bunch of eggs in some mops, and then move the adults and use that as a raising tank, a 20-gallon is fine. Now, if you want to have a permanent breeding setup, you could be like Gary Lang and use 20 gallons. But in general, if you can, the more left to right swim room you give them, the better for rainbows. They'll grow faster and they'll be more prolific. However, you can breed them in small groups, right? One male, two females is pretty effective in a 20-gallon, even as they get a little bit bigger, because there's not enough fish to take up too much of that room. Now, if you're trying to breed in a group of like 8, 9, 10, you really want more space. But if it's a smaller rainbow, like some of the dwarf rainbows, the Maculacae, Kamaka, the Running River rainbow, any of those that are like really cap out at about 3.5 inches, you can get away with something like a 29. It's going to be harder to keep those eggs safe, but a 40 is probably more optimal. Hope that helps.
Freaky Fish Lady says, what would cause a group of 10 turquoise rainbows to turn on some large hand-sized angels that they had been in with over a year and killed them? They're in a 55-gallon.
So usually they don't do damage to other fish. They'll just out eat all the other fish because they're so boisterous, and shyer fish like angels will hide and not get much food. Now, if you've actually like watched them pick on them, rainbows are dumb. They're really dumb. They're pretty, but they're dumb. And they will try to spar with anything. But if the angels picked any fights at any point, even when you weren't paying attention, maybe they're trying to hold ground because they wanted to breed and they'd paired up. The second that they mess with one, all of them get together. It's a natural instinct, and they will basically like sideswipe the fish over and over and over again, because that's the way that they protect each other in groups. They typically are a peaceful fish, but eventually, if they're trying to protect themselves and the predator that they perceive is not too much bigger than them, then what they'll do is they'll come racing at like turbo speeds and basically sideswipe the fish over and over again. And that stress on the angels in this case typically leads to some kind of interior bacteria problem or some other interior stress related disease to where their immune system breaks down and no longer fights off the things that are just in our water no matter what we do, that a typical healthy fish's immune system just fights and doesn't care about. But when that stress occurs, that immunoresponse drops and those things overtake the fish, and typically that leads to death without us seeing obvious signs of disease because of just how nature functions in that fashion. So there's a couple potentials, but in the end, it's probably more that the rainbow saw them as a threat, but not enough of a threat to where they need to run and hide because they're not too big in comparison to the rainbows. And turquoise get big for rainbows, and they're not afraid to like hurl their bulk around to bully something a little bit. Or in some cases, they're so dumb that they'll just try to spar with them thinking you're some other kind of fish that might be trying to attract that pretty little ladyfish over there that I'm trying to attract. Let us spar, and I will show that ladyfish that I am the best male. And the angelfish is like, I'm not even one of you, you dumb butt. But they don't stop because rainbows are dumb. They're pretty, but they're dumb. Which it sucks. I'm sorry you lost your angels. I really am, because I love angels. In general, my recommendation, outside of say like your maintenance crew type fish and not not shrimp. They'll eat shrimp. I tend to keep rainbows alone, unless it's something like an SAE where they get so big that the rainbows are just gonna leave their big fat torpedo butts alone. $180 full of rainbows. I can appreciate that. Sounds pretty nice.
Actually. Sounds kind of like what you were talking about, getting as many as possible in that tank.
Yeah, you know, you can easily 180 gallons. You could easily do 30 adult rainbows. Easily. Uh-oh. It's just me on the screen. You afraid? That GRB Aquatics, I'm going to highlight your comments. Like, interesting how northwestern Australia has very similar fish to the Madagascar rainbows from when the two land masses were connected many years ago. Yeah, that's interesting how evolution occurs, right? And that's one of the theories behind why Madagascar rainbows are where they are, because otherwise, geologically speaking, they shouldn't exist where they are. Is it predates to some kind of ancestor that evolved over time into a rainbow fish existing in some shared water system in Pangaea, right? When they were conjoined land masses millions of years ago. But then the purists will say that they're not rainbow fish. I'm not that crazy. Scientifically speaking, technically, as they're currently defined, not rainbows. But we just loop them anyway because we like them. And they're pretty. They're really pretty. I love Madagascar rainbows. They're gorgeous fish.
I had some, I tried Australian rainbow. I think they're blue.
That's probably the western rainbow fish from Australia. It's really, really common. And there's a lot of little like nuances in potential species that all get looped in as the Australian fish, but they're all cool because they have lots of color. And they're very different coloration than most of the New Guinea rainbow fish. You get a lot of like intermixed mingle color and kind of checkerboard or splotchy patterns that are really neat.
Okay. But would those be considered pure?
Yes. That's where it gets interesting, because a lot of depending on your fish farm and how bad it's flooded and how many times it's flooded, the different species of Australian rainbows have kind of intermingled in some of those fish farms. Not all of them, but some. And so they just generically call them Australian rainbow fish rather than calling them, well, this is the Australis, and this is the Rubrostriata, and this is and this is the this, because they're like, well, it's an Australian rainbow fish. A lot of it just comes down to the Western Australian rainbow, which is, I think that's the Australis, if I remember correctly. The common names get used a lot more because it's easier on retailers. Oh, that's an Australian rainbow, or that's a Irian red rainbow. That's a yellow rainbow. Instead of being like, well, that's a Melanitania Herbert axelrodi. That's a Glossolepis incisus. It's about making it simple. But a lot of times when we see the Australian rainbow, it's hard to know exactly which species it is, because often they've kind of intermingled some in a lot of the farms that farm them up, because you don't ship those ones in from the wild, really. They're so easy to farm them that they've been farmed. And a lot of those outdoor Florida farms, which is where they're one of the best places to grow rainbows, they flood in hurricanes, and the species kind of intermix. And they're just like, well, they all look the same. Put them in that pond. It's not like Bozemanite, where when you see a Bozemanite, you know what they are. Or like, Glitch Aquatics is like assorted Africans, right? Where it's just like, well, kind of all got mixed together and they're all in a baboona. Or they're all of this. They're all some kind of peacock.
Oh.
Assorted African cichlid. Done.
OBs.
Yeah. Yeah, so you got people even diving in. Danny Wesh there. You highlighted it. Bam. We're in the same mind frame right now. We're on the wavelength. Gary Lang said they're most likely Splendida. Yeah, thanks to the other one I couldn't remember. Splendida. Just doesn't want to pop into the brain right now. I collect mostly the New Guinea rainbow fish. and a lot less of the Australians, even though my favorite of all my rainbow fish is an Australian rainbow fish. Figure that one out.
Right.
Running River, man. It's Australia.
So what do you think about the what is it? Scissor tail, a yellow scissor tail, and the Suda McGills and the
Yeah, so you're talking about Suda McGill
thread
furcata,
fins.
and that's Erythrina. Oh, can't remember the second part. I always remember the Erythrina, but the threadfin, yeah. So I like them, but I have kind of dedicated myself to the bigger rainbows. So it can be really hard to keep them together. Now, it's certainly possible, the Suda McGills and the big boys. The problem is the big boys and blue eyes is what we generically call to all the Suda McGills and some of the other like the threadfin rainbow, where it's not considered a Suda McGill, but it is in the blue eye category. Science. But the thing is, like, the big boys are so boisterous when they go to eat that they can bully other fish kind of unintentionally, because they're just so aggressive isn't really the right word, but they attack food so quickly, and they're like torpedoes flying around at food that shyer fish or smaller fish will stay out of the way. So I kind of got into a situation where I just actively chose, I'm just going to keep the big boys. So the Melanitanias, the Chalathrinas, and the Glossolepis, the three big species of rainbows that are from Australia and New Guinea. I like them, but it's just like, I can dedicate a tank to them, or I can dedicate a tank to a big rainbow. And those big rainbows, just like, my eyes pop at them every time, because they're such like big, beautiful dummies, and I love them to death. So I keep more big, beautiful dummies. Yeah, there's that too. There's the Fluviatilis, which is really common. There are a lot of like hybrids that are either Splendidas or Australis. The real thing is that it's actually becoming harder and harder to find true Australis as far as like in random pet stores. You can get it through the hobbyists, because the hobbyists are like, oh yeah, I've got Australis from this collection point, whatever. They get, we're really psycho about our documentation in the bowhead community. But it's one of those things where, find the one you like, stick with it. They're all beautiful. There's so many of them that are beautiful. It's only when you get the hybrids that they start kind of getting kind of meh.
So how are because I noticed the hybrids have their own, I guess, would it be genotypes? Is that what I'm looking for? Like,
well, most of them are typically all in the same genus, so they'll be like crossing Melanitania and Melanitania, but you can even get ones that are cross. They're usually sterile, but you can get like Chalatharina and Melanitania will spawn if they're together in a tank. I watch it all the time. My Melanitania Frederici females get chased by my Chalatharina blaheri males in the tank that I keep them together all the time. But that tank, no baby is going to survive in that tank, so I'm not worried about it. I just keep them for fun. But if I were going to breed them, I would separate them and put them into their own breeding tanks. But as a display, I'll keep them together, no problem. Okay. So that's why I love to say, like, rainbows don't discriminate. They don't care. They don't care what you are. They love you anyway.
So when you get the ones, let's say like the Splendida per se, and I guess the Fluviatilis. So would they be natural occurring per se and considered hybrids? And how are they accepted by the
Sure. So in the wild, they exist in different portions of river systems. So they don't occur together in the wild. So like you'll have like a several 100-yard stretch of a stream or river that's separated by waterfalls or some other major obstruction that creates a region, and you'll have one type of rainbow fish there. And then you could go a few miles down the same creek or river and find a different rainbow fish that's separated by all these natural geological obstructions. So they don't naturally exist together, but at the same time, they exist in the same water system. They're in the same watershed. They're just at different locations
Gotcha.
within that watershed. So can they exist together? Yes. How do the psycho bowheads treat them? Is like, don't intermix them for breeding. Intermix them for keeping all you want, but don't mingle them for breeding. The problem is when you have a lot of those rainbows that come from similar water systems, they often look so similar that it's hard to tell, especially in the females, apart. Because the females tend to have less robust color and patterning. So they can look very, very similar. And it can become very, very difficult to tell, well, what's the difference between this fluviatilis female and this splendida female? Now, super nerds can figure it out, but it's still, even to them, difficult. So often, the big thing is you keep them separate just to make sure you never accidentally mix them up. But if you have big obvious differences like a Chalatherina and a Melanitania, their body shapes are so different. You can tell the females and males of each type apart very easily because of their body shape.
Gotcha.
Where like all the Melanitanias basically have the same body shape. All the Chalatherinas have the same body shape. All the Glossolepis have the same body shape. So you run risk of them getting mixed together.
Okay, cool. Well, what happened was earlier in the conversation, the natural occurring obstructions we didn't have in the explanation. So I had this picture of the waterway section, but yet they could still get to each other. And I was wondering how.
There are some rare cases that have happened where the scientists believe that somehow one or two actual wild fish got further down the water system than they were supposed to naturally, because normally they can't survive. Usually there's some kind of predator or something in the way that prevents that. Like in the case of a lot of the Australian rainbows, they typically deal with spangled perch as a big predator of them in a lot of their natural systems. But it can in theory happen, and they're not sure. Like the Running River rainbow is a great example. They're not sure whether someone accidentally released fish there or whether something somehow magically made it all the way down the water system and started the hybridization process. Because once a different fish is introduced to the wild, they will hybridize over time. So finding pure strains becomes very, very difficult, which is why they have there's a great video on YouTube called the Running River Project that's all about how this small group of scientists from the University of Canberra basically saved this fish from extinction by hybridization. That's part of why they're, to me, my crown jewel, because it's such a compelling story, and a fish that once you see it at full color in a planet tank, it's reds, it's gold, it's black striping, it's all this stuff. It's just a beautiful fish, absolutely stunning fish. It's hard to say no. It's hard to say no. They look like little jewels in the water. That's the best part. So do tetras, so do danios, so do saltwater fish. That's the best part, man. We're keeping like little living jewels. It's fantastic. It's the best part about this hobby.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, we done got an hour and 48 in. I was going to try to push the 2 hours because everybody was really enjoying. But I done got a little hungry over here.
I can understand that.
Brother, hey, thank you for coming on. I love to be able to have a varied guest list where we can touch all aspects of the hobby. Like tonight, we truly went in on a fish nerd jamboree. And I could tell that it was well received. I received it wonderfully. I mean, you notice you just got me down in the rabbit hole.
Secretly, I'm trying to convert you into a rainbow fish keeper.
Yeah, it surprised me. I had so many questions in regards to the rainbows. I mean, you're the first person who was just so immersed in the rainbows like that, and you're gonna have me sitting, going here and putting on my watch later list all these rainbow videos.
I do want to answer. I want to answer one question just because he's asking. I think it's actually a really great question. So from Dane, should you be safe mixing different genus rainbows and pull them off with a guarantee of no hybridization? No, not at all. You actually risk, even with same different genus, there being effectively cross contamination in the way that their eggs get fertilized. And they can produce just completely sterile eggs that'll never hatch, or they can produce these like weird mutant rainbows that will be sterile, and who knows what's going to happen to them. So in general, whenever we're breeding rainbows, we want them in completely separate tanks. So what we'll do is we'll buy something like 12 fish or 8 fish or whatever, and then we'll pick our best male and 2 good solid females, and we'll split them away into a breeding tank for a couple of weeks, let them lay a bunch of eggs in a mop, because typically rainbow fish eggs take anywhere between 7 and 21 days to hatch. Usually about 10 to 14 is more typical. So you leave them in there for a week and a half, and if you start seeing fry, or you just know you're really loaded with eggs, you pull the adults back out, put them back in whatever display tank you have them in, and let your fry raise up in that tank where they laid all the eggs. And it's just really efficient way to use your tanks if you're trying to breed like one specific type. Just a little advice there for you, Dane. Sorry to interrupt the flow, but I had to answer that one because it's a good question.
No. Hey, I'm not mad at that at all. Renee, thank you for coming through, Renee. Hey, I'm still trying to get you on, Renee. Stop ducking, Renee.
Come have some fun.
I'm trying to get you in. See, Renee is a very educated fish hobbyist, but he's not a YouTuber. You know, he's got ponds, he's got tanks. I mean, he's just not a YouTuber. I'm trying to get him in. Come on, Renee.
Of the people that know the most aren't YouTubers. That's where you get all that super secret guru knowledge.
Right.
You know, those people who aren't trying to be like their face in front of a camera all the time. They're just like, I'm all about the fish. I don't need anything else but the fish. Those are the people you want to get. That's where the real good knowledge comes from. It's not dummies like me. I got a little bit. They got a lot of bit. You got to harvest those people. Those are the ones.
Most definitely. Hey, you see, yeah, there you go. So you're getting warmed up already. Come on. Most definitely. Hey, y'all, thank y'all for coming and sitting through this hard stream. You know, you could barely get anything out of him. You know, no. Bentley, thank you, man. Thank you very much, dude. Look,
it was a blast.
You make this extremely easy, and all I want to do is provide. I want to be able to hit everything, man. You know, at any given time, you know, I want this to be like gumbo. I want this, the fishy den, the extended hug. I want it to be like gumbo. I want to be able to give everybody something that they like. Look who we got in our King and Queen Sickly, sir. Thank you for coming through. Most definitely. But yes, Bentley, thank you, man. Look, I don't know how far Jeffrey Watts is going to take his rainbow deep dive.
Hopefully very far.
Jeffrey, this is for you. Now, I had no idea that Bentley was so deep, in the rainbow fish wormhole. I had no idea. But look, when I tell you Jeffrey's always talking to me about rainbows, here you go, man. Here you go. But yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
No, dude, it was an absolute blast. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. Hey, at some point given time, man, I may have to come back around, give us another run. You know, the fact that you can be, where you are, in YouTube, and to share this time, share this knowledge, man. I mean, it's a salute to you. It really is.
Thank you. Well, it's like I said, I have a personal mission when it comes to YouTube. Like, I do this for fun. I do this because it's my hobby, and my goal in whatever it may be in doing YouTube is just be that rising tide, raise all ships.
Okay.
I want to see more aquarists doing better overall, regardless of whether they keep Oscars, stingrays, saltwater, freshwater, rainbows, tetras, whoever. I just want to see everybody share knowledge and get better at this hobby that we love so much. Plain and simple.
Amen. Scott, we're going to get together, Scott, man. If I have to do a random stream to get you in here, we need to get something together, brother. You tell me when you can, and I'm gonna see where I'm at. We got to get this done, bro. We got to get this done. We got to get this done. All right, y'all. Like I say, love somebody, man. Love somebody. Show them that they're not here by themselves. Take care of those fish. Y'all be good, and God bless. We're out.